Okay, so finally, what you've all been waiting for is my demonstration, kind of taking you through Canvas, because a lot of you had asked, like, I think it's really hard to explain what Canvas looks like or how I'm setting it up when you don't actually have an example to look at. So, as you know, I'm sure you all are. I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to show you what it looks like. So this is my, let me make this bigger. So this is my dashboard in Canvas. So this is what Canvas looks like from my side of things, not from the student side. You can see I've made like little, these are my classes. My school actually auto-populates them, and then I either change the title or I make my own and share that with students. But I wanted to show you, let's see. I'm thinking maybe I'll show you an older photo 1 class. I think that might be helpful for you to see. But also I'll start with jewelry medals so that you can kind of see. So I do group my jewelry medals into one class, and then I group my 2s, 3s, and 4s into another class, and they share content. So in my jewelry 1, this is kind of what it looks like. So it doesn't normally look like this. So I'll show you my other template in a minute, but this is when we went remote learning. This is their agenda, kind of like, it's not their agenda. In that case, I did a little differently, where I set up all of the remote learning expectations and everything on one slide so that parents knew how to access everything. I think this year our school is planning on coming up with a common landing page for all so that no matter what class you get to, you know how to navigate. I think that's hard sometimes, right? And then I did a video on how to go through remote learning, so if kids were struggling with that, they knew how to do that. So modules is the way it's set up, and in modules, it's like my toolboxes. So I've moved things around because, like I said, with remote, I had to kind of reorganize stuff. So I start off with a documents module, which you could say is your first toolbox, really. But it's got my syllabus attached. And then here's my grading that I will share with you guys. It's got my grading overview, studio habits of mind, how I give feedback and what that looks like. It's called the feedback flowchart. And then my weekly goal sheet that I was talking about too. So I will share all of that with you guys. I also have my levels of mastery rubric for artwork, and I have my levels of mastery rubric for studio habits of mind, which is focusing on the specific techniques. So all of that is like the documents. I put that all in one spot in the beginning so students and teachers, or students and parents, if they want to access, can see that. Okay, so this is the little triangle, kind of shrinks it. In remote learning, I did not have these choice boards up here until later. They didn't have access to that, but they did have a whole remote learning toolbox. So I definitely will be setting this up differently for remote or hybrid or whatever it's going to look like in the fall for us. But this is what it looked like when I went fully remote at the shutdown. So we had a student attendance form that students had to submit for each class that they attended. Remote learning grading, I wanted to give them an overview with the rubric, and I did a video so that they knew that those were the top places to access that. And then here were their assignments. So unlike traditionally how I set it up, in their remote learning, they had a set of slides that they accessed here. And you can see that each slide, here's your daily expectation, each slide is dated and told them what to do. So in remote learning in general, I would say my biggest tip is to keep it very clear what you're asking them to do, help break it down for them, because students struggle with any executive functioning when they're on their own at home. So any way that you can say that this is what you should be working on today, that's going to be helpful. So you can see on April 7th, they had to do, so our school went to e-learning first, by the way. We went to e-learning for the first 2 weeks. Then we had a week of spring break, and then we went to remote learning. So this is specifically to remote learning. Our e-learning looked very similar, but it was a little different. So our remote learning started on April 7th. The pictures are not loading, but here's like pictures of land art examples. I have submit attendance. That's the first thing you need to do. I asked them to do a discussion board, so I'll show you what that looks like. And then they have to, so that holds them accountable for engaging when they're not in class. So even the discussion board, I might have had prompts like, how are you doing today? Or what's one thing you're grateful for? Or share a challenge with your artwork right now. That was like quick. It was something for them to engage with so that they could engage with each other, but also that I knew that they were doing okay. And then create. So go here for an overview of your assignment. So that's the overview. And then I have a whole break it down. So like I said, a calendar kind of, this is what you need to do. So you can see here, land art continued. So on the 9th, because we did every other day, on the 9th, here's what you need to do. Submit attendance, review my remote grading policy, because I added a video at that day, the discussion board, create, here's a review of your assignment, and then the next slide's for break it down. So I kind of added those on. So here's the next slide you can kind of see. So here's what you should be doing on each day, kind of helped them break that down. Okay. I had a catch-up day. See, art class catch-up day. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes I will embed videos. So when they were ready to do choice boards, I wanted them to understand how I did that. So I embedded this little video on how to access the choice boards. So you can see on that I had like each one had a different theme, and then they clicked on that choice theme, and then under that I had 4 different options, and each one of those had slides that attached to that so that they can kind of decide where they wanted to go. And then I do as many videos as possible. So you're probably sick of listening to my voice by now, but so are my students, I'll tell you that much. Okay, so that's how I set up remote learning. It probably will look a little different, but then here's the discussion board. So every day I dated them. So remote learning, 4/7 check-in. That's the discussion board. I can't click on that because it'll show student names. But if you click on it, you would be able to see my discussion topic, and then there's little responses that they have. And then each day, again, is dated so that they knew what they needed to get done. So you can see e-learning was a little different. Okay. Shrink those. Okay. So if you were looking at my traditional Canvas page, on the first one you would see my embedded slides, which a tip for you if you're going to embed if you're going to do a daily agenda is to do your slides backwards. So every new day is at the top of your agenda, and then that'll show as your first slide on your homepage. So students every day or anytime you update it, they'll see that day's agenda, but then they can click on the slides to go back if they were missing a day or if they forgot something, or you're like, you know, I linked that information 2 days ago, they can go back and look at that. All right, so technique toolbox. So I will, for jewelry, I set it up like this. So one toolbox started off with fine arts community, the creative process, there's a little quick quiz, safety in the classroom, and then a quiz. So again, you see 5 or 10 points for these quizzes. They don't really mean anything. They weren't worth any points. I had to put them in Canvas that way, but they were not worth anything in gradebook. And then I set up a portfolio one. So we do a whole day where they have to learn how to set up their portfolio slides. So we actually do this as a whole class because it's tricky for them to understand how to set up your portfolio template. And then underneath that, I have submission. So under their portfolio, this is like every time that a student finishes a specific challenge, they know to submit it under here. So submission, mini sketchbook, they knew that when this was opened, that they would submit their work here. So again, it's just submitting a link on their end. Okay. So these are grayed out because you can see I actually didn't open these. And the reason is because these two I actually changed. These were from the previous year. I actually got rid of these. I ended up not using them. I changed how I taught, or students didn't get to it because it was last semester. And then final artwork, they would have gotten to that. Okay. So I might open up those first things in the beginning, but what I do typically is clump them by their level of foundation. So I'm not going to put a technique toolbox of composition along with a technique toolbox of soldering. Those are two very different levels of competencies. So what I want is to start my kids all out at the same levels of competencies, meaning that they get to choose which toolbox they start with, but that they're all needed as a foundational tool. So for example, my first technique toolboxes would be composition, elements, and principles. Those were the two ones that I had. So a group might be working on their mini sketchbook first, while another group might be working on their low budget jewelry, which is like found materials, kind of exploring elements and principles. And then they swap when they're ready. When they're finished with this, then they move this, and vice versa. So I only open these or publish them at once. So even though I have all these other toolboxes underneath, students don't see those. From the student view, they would only see these if they are published. So right now, obviously, all of these are published because we already went through all of that. So in composition, I'll just show you what that looks like. So in composition, so this is like a learning tool. They might have a video, they might have slides, they might have an article or something, depending on what it is that they're learning. So composition. So this one is slides. They have to go through these slides and understand what this is, right? So you get to the bottom. These are the concepts I want them to learn, and then keep calm and it's quiz time, right? So then they go back and they go to the quiz. So under the quiz, preview it so you can see it. So under the quiz, this is a multiple choice quiz. You could have short answer. I do a little bit of both sometimes, but it takes longer to grade them, right? The students will click on whatever answer they think it is, and then they get a score right away, so they get feedback and they see what's wrong. What's awesome about these quizzes is a lot of times, you know, if it'll say like, nope, you're wrong, I can either edit that and put an option that if a student gets it wrong, then they understand why. Like right under the question, it'll be like, well, I could see why you would think it was off center because of X, Y, and Z, but really it's, you know, rule of thirds or whatever it is, right? They get immediate feedback that way. Or I oftentimes where students will click on the wrong answer, they don't understand why, they'll come to me and say, Mrs. Taylor, I'm struggling with this. Why did I get this wrong? And then I can give them that feedback. And other kids, they don't care. They just want to get through it. I get it, but then they're going to practice it and I'll be able to give them that immediate feedback there. So they have a quiz. And then they have a challenge. So the challenge, again, needs to fit the size of the technique that I'm teaching or concept I'm teaching. So in this case, they had to make a mini sketchbook. They had choices in their layout of their sketchbook. They learned composition and using different materials. I really wanted to loosen them up. Here's my example. I showed them there's a video that they could play of me talking about this because, like you know, I like to do lots of videos. And then I show them how to actually put it together even though in the classroom I'm there to help them, right? And here help support them. So what do I do when I'm finished? You make a quick reflection video. Another piece I want to touch on is reflection, is that I like to give them as many options as available. I do force them, quote unquote, or I expect them to try the different modalities that I give them. So I might say, in this one, make a quick reflection video. Students are like, do I have to do a video? Well, then I explain to them, well, it doesn't have to show your face. Or you know what, if they come up to me and they're like, I don't want to do a video, I'm really anxious about that, I'm like, fine, you can write it out, that's fine too. But I'm asking you to try this. And I will tell you that most students are like, oh, later on when they have to reflect on something, they will choose to do a video because it's faster. They find it's faster to do than to write it all out. Some kids, I've noticed, will write out a whole script and like read it on a video. It's kind of sweet as well. So, you know, it just teaches them different ways to reflect, that it's not just one way. And then in the other toolbox, again, so I might have lesson, quiz, challenge, and then some other resources. So like a sketch sheet to help them understand how to sketch. Sometimes they use directly in their sketchbook. Sometimes they'll do it on a worksheet. It's whatever helps them structure it because they're just starting out. And then I include a rubric. Okay, so then all of these will be closed. The next one I might do is wire forming, as I mentioned. So this one will be open, and sawing and piercing. Okay, so you can see how once I notice that kids are kind of ready and done with these two things, then I start opening the toolboxes. So students will be like, well, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Instead of having them wait like you normally would with it, well, we have to finish, I need to find some time fillers. Here you can say, well, great, I'm going to open up the next toolbox, and you can start getting ahead on that and choose where you want to go. then students start seeing that and they get excited. Oh, I want to use those tools, or I want to use the torch. And then you'll notice that some students will excel and exceed ahead, just like in any other thing, but instead of waiting, you're allowing them to explore and push their own thinking instead of saying, nope, you have to wait for everybody else. So I actually think this has been a great way for extension and intervention through choice. Okay, so hopefully that shows you a good example of kind of how I set that up for jewelry metals. You can see how, I guess I'll scroll down here. So you can see I would start with the low budget jewelry and the composition. And then here I do wire forming and sewing and piercing. And then I'll open up stamping and soldering. So they have to do a set. So you can see how they start to get more and more choice, right? The first thing is experiment and play with a sketchbook, experiment and play with using recycled materials. Then it's, okay, now like actually apply some of these skills in a very low risk way. And now it's, okay, expand your mind and think more conceptually and push your boundaries. Okay, now we're ready to talk about artistic thinking and your artwork proposals, right? So hopefully that kind of made sense. I know a question came up about photos, so I'm gonna pull up my photo example for you. Let's see, courses. One of my old photo one from first semester. Somebody had asked, while I'm looking at this, somebody had asked too, like, can you share this so that I can access this? I don't know how to do that. I don't know if our district allows for that, I'll be honest with you. So let's see here, let me scroll down, I bet it's semester one. I know within department you can, so you can see my colleague, Miss Weston, she shared that with me so that I could see, where is it? Here we are, I think this is it. Okay, so somebody asked, like, how do you structure darkroom and with your toolboxes? So here's a good example of my slides. So you can see embedded on here is my information and also then my slides, that agenda. So this is the last day we had class together, but you can scroll back and see every single day, right? So you can see what we're focusing on. Okay, so if I go to modules, oh, and announcements I use a lot too if I just want to tell my students something really quickly. Okay, so you can see here all the toolboxes. I've closed all of these because we completed all of them. But again, course documents, unit checklists and goal setting could be under your documents, but we do a lot of goal setting. I'll share that, like I said. I start off with a toolbox of who are you and what is art? Is photography art? So we talk a little bit about ourselves and our experience with photography and what we think is photography. I give, in this particular one, I have a Padlet that kind of self-diagnostic or gives me like a diagnostic tool for students to see where they're at. I have an article. I have a couple, these are a couple articles. This is a discussion board. And then they actually have to do a quick challenge, which is Before I Was an Artist, which is a slide doc that students have to make of like old photos in their camera roll and why they were not good photos. So they're starting off identifying qualities of good and bad photography. Then I open up composition, point of view. Those open up as well as, I think I do film camera at the same time. So all three of those are open at once. And students can go to composition, point of view, or maybe I open up this one, and this one. It might be that way. But regardless, again, so the question was like, how do we get to darkroom? So in this, my students are starting off digital. So that's what I decided to do using their camera phones. They start off learning about composition, then they have a quick quiz, and then the challenge is on composition. So for example, I wanted my students to immediately start putting meaning making and storytelling into their techniques. So they're learning composition, but they're also learning how composition can tell a story. So find a partner, write a very short story. With that partner, take digital photos of using your phone or whatever you have access to tell the story in images, considering your subject, focal point, and compositional placements. Demonstrate at least one of each of the compositional technique, and then make a slides presentation including each of these. So narrate your story on each slide, etc. And then I always try to include like an FAQ, like, can I be in a group of 3? Yes, but no more, that kind of stuff. So in that practice, students, it was so cute. I got this example. I think it's in my Break It Down presentation. But I got this example of a backpack where the students took the backpack on a trip for the day, and it was like through the halls, telling how the backpack felt lost, that their student had forgotten them, and then it was like, then it was scared because whatever, and so they used composition in using that backpack. Now, were these images like stellar? No, it was like a bland photo with a backpack, but they were practicing it and connecting it with meaning making. So that's what I want to incorporate in each one of my toolboxes. So then, same thing, point of view. I have a bunch of toys, so they go and do some like perspective point of view with the toys, and again, telling a story. What does that tell about that? And then while they're working on that, I pause them all at a point where we start to talk about the film camera. And they bring in their cameras. By this point, I've had all this time to check their cameras. I've asked them to bring them in every day, like, okay, bring in your camera. Let me make sure it's in working condition. Or if you need to rent one from me, you can do that. And then once I know that everybody's got a film camera, then we do our lesson it's like we do it together. So this one's together, and it's parts of the camera. And what is a camera? They take a quiz on their own, and then a day in a life. So again, this very first experience, they are going out and shooting a day. So usually they spend the class period doing maybe their first 5 shots as a class. So they go around the school or go around right outside my classroom and take a few photos, because I want to make sure that they understand how to use their light meter and all sorts of things like that, or not having technical issues. And then they take the rest of their film throughout their day. Okay, so then while they're doing that outside of class, they are accessing elements of art, toolbox, right? So I'm teaching them about that. They have a challenge where they work with their partners to find images on the internet, and then they take images. So the students are always having to now look for things, both in existing images, but also look for them in real life. Then while they're working on that, I start getting kids that have taken their film. So not everybody takes it all at once. So then they can start, hey, Mrs. Taylor, I've taken my film. What do I do? Hey, well, you can start doing the film developing toolbox. And in that, then we practice how to roll film on a reel. And that takes time. They do it in front of me where they can practice it. And then we have like practice film. And then they put it under the table, and then they do it in the bag. And then they get to develop, once they've passed that quiz is actually me watching them do that. Then once they've done that, then they can develop their film. So then students are automatically already spaced out, so you don't have all the kids doing it at once, which is great. But then what's also great is those students who've gone through developing their film then can help the other students while you're working with others. And then they move into the darkroom. The other option, so darkroom, we do photograms, so I don't have them do enlargements right away. So if you've finished everything up until this point, but you're not ready to develop your film, or there's too many students waiting for that, you get to go in the darkroom. So you take the lesson, you do the quiz, and then you get to do photograms. So that takes a few minutes to go find objects for photograms, So it's really about like structuring this low risk practice along the way, and making sure that students are kind of grouped in smaller groups, because their pacing is so individualized, they will automatically form into groups. So I often notice that my kids who start off and are like super excited and develop their film right away are also the kids that are going to be the first ones to make enlargements. And they're also the ones who are going to want to take like 20 rolls of film, not literally, but So each one is really broken down. I used to teach all of this at once, like how to do test strips, then you do your contact. No, now I move it into smaller fractions. So a kid might be ready for test strips, contact prints, enlargements. If I have time, I'll go and show them right away. If not, I'll say go ahead and look at the toolbox while I'm helping these kids, and then I'll go into the darkroom with you and show you how to make a test strip, contact print, and an enlargement. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense how I kind of structured it, at least in the beginning, to get the kids using both their safe practice of their phones, but also getting into the darkroom and kind of working through that. Yeah, hopefully that explained all of that for you guys. Okay, I think that answers. I'm going to go back to my document here real quick. Oh, there's all my videos I need to post on YouTube now for you guys. I think that's it. Would you be willing to share a Canvas course and how you're using it? So hopefully that made sense to you on how I'm using my Canvas courses and structured it so that each module counts as a toolbox. Within the toolbox, I have a lesson, a quiz or an assessment of some sort, and then a challenge. And then I also open like only 2 to 3 of these toolboxes at once. And sometimes I'm still building them as we go. But just so you know, it's not like I open all these toolboxes and students can just do whatever they want. It's just not like that. I scaffold it by those clusters of curriculum that is, like I said, the same foundational skill. So I'm not going to move them up to the next level until they've already finished all of the first level. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys to see this a little bit clearer. I think it's helpful. Please, again, like do not hesitate to ask me any questions. Shoot me an email and I will do my best to get back to you. And like I said, as soon as I figure out what this is going to look like in the fall, I will be happy to share with you what I'm at least thinking. I cannot guarantee it will be 100% effective. So, okay. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for sitting with me for all of this. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of information, but hopefully these questions will help. What I've answered for you will help you kind of navigate your own journey and process. All right. Thank you so much.